Hey folks, here we are for the thrilling conclusion of my 3-episode miniseries addressing Questions for Atheists by Matt Slick, posted on the carm.org website. In episodes 1 and 2, I covered questions 1 through 21 of this 31 question list. So let's finish it off by starting with question 22, which is, do you believe there is such a thing as evil? If so, what is it? I think there is such a thing as evil because evil is a moral concept invented by humans, and it is a very useful concept. I don't think that it's as simple as saying this is evil and this is not. I mean, in extreme cases it is, but I don't think that you can draw a sharp black line and say on this side it is evil and on this side it is good. I just don't think it works that way. I think there's a lot of messiness involved. I think the border between evil and not evil is very porous, and there's a lot of bleed through. But yes, I believe that there is such a thing as evil. I think some things that I would describe as being evil in a very general sort of way, I would say unnecessary cruelty, wanton cruelty, torture, harm to children, harm to the innocent in general. Those are things I would consider evil. Inaction in the face of great suffering. If you have the power to intervene and prevent suffering, but you willfully choose not to, I think I would call that evil. There are lots of things I would call evil. I think it's a sound and useful moral concept invented by humans. 23. If you believe that the God of the Old Testament is morally bad, by what standard do you judge that he is bad? By the moral standards according to which I live my own life. By the standards that tell me that war is bad, that violence is bad, that bigotry is bad, that jealousy is bad, that pettiness is bad, that anger is bad, especially when it is turned to destructiveness, that the powerful punishing the weak for actions that they cannot help or that they are not completely responsible for, the morality that tells me to turn from all those things. That's the morality by which I judge the God of the Old Testament as being morally bad, because the God of the Old Testament is guilty of all of those things I just said. Number 24, what would it take for you to believe in God? Sufficient evidence for God's existence. Number 25, what would constitute sufficient evidence for God's existence? Again, I question why there had to be 31 of these. If these were the questions, if you couldn't come up with better questions than this, why not make it 25 questions for atheists? What would constitute good evidence? It's difficult to nail down what would constitute evidence that would necessarily imply the existence of a God. Matt Dillahunty has said if God exists and he's omnipotent, then he knows what is necessary to convince me that he exists. And I think that's as good of an answer as any. But I can easily imagine how there could have been better evidence than there is. If we're talking about evidence for the existence of the Christian God, if the Bible were the kind of miraculous book that Christians often claim that it is, when plainly it is not. If the Bible were a truly supernatural book, let's say the Bible was a text that was impossible to destroy. You couldn't burn a Bible. You couldn't tear a Bible apart. It was supernaturally protected. If a Bible was supernaturally protected against miscopying, or mistranslation, or it had some kind of mystical ability to make sure that anyone who read it would be able to interpret it as God intended it to be interpreted, so there would be no disagreements over doctrine or interpretation. That would be pretty damn close. That would be a pretty good argument. If the Bible were the only magical, perfect book, that would be good. Because, see, Christians talk about it as though it is. But it's not. It's just another book. It has the same properties as lots of other books. But if it were a real magic book that could do the kinds of things and more that I just described, that would be pretty good. I don't know if that would be definitive evidence that the Christian God existed, but it would be much better than what we have. Number 26, must this evidence be rationally based, archaeological, testable in a lab, etc., or what? Yes, broadly speaking. I don't know if it necessarily has to be testable in a lab, but yes, it has to be reasonably verifiable. Yes, of course. If it's not, then how is it evidence? It goes back to the scientific method question that I answered in the previous video, question 15. If it's not testable, if it's not rational, if it's not based in something, then in what sense can you call it evidence? Of course it must be. Number 27, do you think that a society that is run by Christians or atheists would be safer? Why? I don't think a society run by Christians or by atheists would necessarily be safer or less safe than the other. There's nothing about Christianity or atheism that imparts any particular level of morality to you. You can be a Christian and be a wonderful, upright, moral person, or you can be a Christian and be an absolute monster. You can be an atheist and be a humane, upright, moral person, or be an absolute monster. I think that societies run by humane, compassionate, just, moral, tolerant, open-minded, educated people would probably, in the long run, be safer than societies run by people who lack those qualities. It has nothing to do with whether you are a Christian or an atheist or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Buddhist or whatever. Because you can be a member of any of those traditions and be a moral person or an educated person, an intelligent person, a thoughtful, compassionate, humane person, or be none of those things. But those are the qualities that really matter, not what religion you identify as a part of. Number 28, do you believe in free will? Free will being the ability to make choices without coercion. I remember Christopher Hitchens saying something, he may have been quoting someone else, but I remember him saying, of course we have free will, we don't have a choice. I think that's probably the best answer to the question. I don't know if we truly have free will or not. I don't know if the choices we make that appear to be free are actually limited or directed by some unseen force that we just can't perceive. I don't know. I think what we have feels like free will, and I think we should live our lives and treat each other on the assumption that we have free will, unless there are detectable circumstances showing that we don't in a particular scenario. But yeah, for all practical purposes, I think we have free will. As we live our lives, as we go through this world, I would say we have free will, or at least we might as well have. Number 29, if you believe in free will, do you see any problem with defending the idea that the physical brain, which is limited and subject to the neurochemical laws of the brain, can still produce free will choices? No, I don't. I think that would be too narrow a definition of free will, at least for me. Of course, I think it's implied that our free will is limited by the laws of nature. Our free will is limited by what is possible. Just because you can't choose to do something that is impossible doesn't mean that you lack free will. It just means that the thing you want to do is not available. It doesn't mean you lack free will. It just means you lack free will. You have free will of the available options. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Number 30, if you affirm evolution and that the universe will continue to expand forever, then do you think it is probable that given enough time, brains would evolve to the point of exceeding mere physical limitations and become free of the physical and temporal and thereby become deity and not be restricted by space and time? If not, why not? I'm going to say no. I don't think that it's probable or even possible. And the reason I say that is because I think the question goes way overboard at the end there. I think it might be possible for beings to evolve, given enough time, to have abilities far beyond what we have today. Maybe even abilities that we, from our perspective, would consider superhuman or godlike even. I think maybe that's possible. But free of the physical and temporal, I don't know about that. Free of, I don't know if it would ever be possible to evolve beyond the laws of physics, because evolution is directed by the laws of physics. That just seems nonsensical to me. So no, I don't think it could happen to that point. I don't think people could ever evolve to the point of deity in the sense that they would have godlike omnipotence, or they would be able to break the laws of physics. I think evolution, any kind of evolution, whether it's biological evolution or chemical, cosmological evolution, I think it would always have to be in accordance with the laws of the universe. And question 31. If you answered the previous question in the affirmative, then aren't you saying that it is probable that some sort of God exists? Well, let's assume that I did answer the previous question in the affirmative. Are you saying, Matt Slick, Christian apologist, that you would accept that that's how the being that you worship as God came about? See, I find this to be a very disingenuous question coming from a Christian apologist. Because you're saying, well, what if beings eventually evolved to be godlike beings? Then wouldn't you accept that some sort of God exists? That's completely different than the kind of God that you are saying exists. You're not saying that God evolved naturally in the universe and eventually became this incredibly powerful being. You're saying that God is eternal and transcendent and exists outside of the universe and in fact created the universe and sustains the universe. You're not talking about a God that is of the universe, that evolved under the umbrella of the universe. You're talking about a God that made the universe. They're two completely different things. So I find it a completely irrelevant and very disingenuous question to try and use that to sort of get your foot in the door and say, well, if you believe in that, then why don't you believe in God? Completely different concepts. Not a good ending, Matt. I'm sorry. But anyway, that's it for those questions. I hope you guys enjoyed these videos. This was fun to do. It's sort of like going for a nice brisk run. Get the atheist muscles working. Get some exercise in the old atheist parts of the brain, if those even exist. I don't know. Some atheists might say, well, that's the whole brain, because we're really full of ourselves. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it, everybody. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Hey folks, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it, share it, subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed already, and also please consider helping me to make more videos like this by sponsoring this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks again for watching. Take care.